Chair recognizes the chairman of the Commerce, Trade, Consumer Protection Subcommittee, Mr. Stearns, for a round of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Greenspan. We certainly welcome your comments. Judging from your testimony and what other members have said, I think in the short term there's probably nothing Congress can do. With less than adequate storage and inability to import sufficient LNG, combined with an increase in demand for natural gas, it comes down to almost Mother Nature, and I guess all of us just praying for a light winter. But I wanted to follow up on two of your points. One, you talked about the flexibility of the economy, and the other is you talked about a mistaken policy, if I heard you correctly, on nuclear energy. So I'd like to take the latter question first. I heard you say that this country has a mistaken policy with nuclear energy, and if I heard you correctly, I'd like you to elaborate. What do you think the United States should do? Because the technologies have changed since we have built nuclear, and in many ways that would relieve some of the problem here. So I appreciate your comments.
Yeah, I think the policy, which I find less than impressive, is more neglect than anything. I don't know what the appropriate nuclear policy should be with respect to the whole energy program. It's a very complex set of issues. But I think that the one thing I'm reasonably certain of is we're spending very little time relative to the size of the problem in raising the question and examining the question and all the various alternatives as to whether we should be doing more nuclear. I mean, the French, for example, have very large nuclear programs, and there's been very little problem that I'm aware of which exists as a consequence of that. I think that a major endeavor to examine this whole program is where I think we ought to be, and I don't deny at the end of the day that a judgment of the Congress is that it is not desirable to move forward in this area. But I don't think, my own suspicion is that's not the way it'll come out, but it is perfectly possible it might.
Yeah. So what you're saying is we have no policy now. There's no discussion. You recommend a full-blown nationwide discussion on nuclear energy and what we should do, and you're saying the outcome is in doubt, what we would do as a result of, but you are actually saying that it's been very poor on the United States to turn and put its head in the ground and not look at nuclear energy as an alternative and try to find out what solutions could be done.
Well, I didn't choose those words, but I find myself in agreement.
Okay, well that's good. I told my staff if I could get a no or yes partly, I'd be very happy. Let me just follow up on my other thought I had. In your testimony, you say nearly 2/5 of the world's natural gas reserves are in Russia and its former satellites, and 1/3 are in the Middle East. Does that include Iraq?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, Iraq is not a major natural gas.
Okay.
It's got very large. It's got well over 110 billion barrels of crude oil, but not all that much natural gas.
Why couldn't we say to the industrial plants and the power plants, let's just let the market decide and let the price go up instead of Congress stepping in? I'm just conjecturing this. And the industrial and the power plants will start to diversify and redundancy, which they should have anyway, and then just take care of the residential, which I think in the big scheme of things, the residential is a lot smaller percentage of everything. And then that's the only way we can get this country to innovate and to come up with solutions. So I guess my question is, maybe as a follow-up, couldn't we have an alternative coal? We mentioned nuclear, hydro for people other than gas, and try to get them to realize that gas is just one commodity and maybe we could go other places.
There's a history of our regulations which most recently goes back to the 1970s, when we try to manage every little nook and cranny in our energy system, and we ended up with long lines at gasoline stations. We have an extraordinary energy economy in this country. If we let it function fully freely, I think we might find that it's producing a great deal more than it currently is producing today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, gentlemen. The chair